And we are back on the Sleepless Pod.
We are back,
We
baby.
are back, and this time we are joined by Tavis.
Two TCs in the room.
Two C's, yeah. TC squared in the room.
TC squared.
Yeah.
TC squared.
Like we are new back to back
Yeah.
DJ partnership, yeah.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
right.
But I guess to start, Tavis, do you want to introduce yourself briefly to the
yeah.
listeners?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Tavis Coburn. I am an illustrator, designer, a DJ sometimes, and just happy to be here. Really happy for these guys. I think they've made a really amazing space for everyone to come and enjoy. So well done.
That's great. Yeah. No, it's still early days for us, but yeah, we're happy with how things are going so far, and hope onwards and upwards from here, right, Robin? So
Yep, yeah, for sure. And yeah, I mean, Tavis was actually one of our earliest customers, actually.
Yeah.
So it's great to have you on. And I know, one of the things we try to do here as well is talk to creatives, and you've made a career out of being creative, and in itself, I'm sure we'll talk and hopefully get some good little piece of advice for people trying to get into different things. Um, but yeah, before you hopped on there, you said you were just starting launching a new company. Do you want to get into that one?
Yeah, I can definitely get into that. So I've been an illustrator for over 22 years. I've also taught at both OCAD, and I'm currently teaching at Sheridan College. And yeah, the illustration industry has its up. It always, it's going to have its ups and downs. Lately, it's sort of been down. So I've always been interested in film. Always been interested in title sequences, type treatments, in-screen graphics, things of that nature. And last year, I actually had the opportunity to work on a film and do just that. So I did opening and closing titles. I did a bunch of UI designs that then get composited in on screens. I know a lot of people, some people may know, some people may not know, but if you have a screen that's on film, whether it's a phone or a laptop or whatever, you actually can't shoot that screen. That screen needs to be green screened. And then you hire somebody like myself to basically create an animation of what the user interface would look like and kind of try and time it to the actor's movements. And it was a ton of fun. It was really like a good kind of creative kick in the butt. It was hard. It was, looking at shot sheets and looking at VFX sheets. It was like reading a whole other language. But yeah, it really, I don't know. I was like, this is super fun. I think I want to do this more. So this year I've been kind of poking around trying to get more jobs like that. And I'm just finding that little bit of resistance as like a single person approaching those companies to do those types of jobs. So I was like, well, why don't I just go ahead and just start a small kind of scrappy design firm that just concentrates on that. And it's really interesting. Like even on LinkedIn, the minute I did it, boom, boom, boom.
Wow.
You get interest. Yeah,
you
yeah.
get it. You get like interest. It's
Yeah.
like all of a sudden you become legit. You're the same guy. I haven't changed locations. Right now it's just myself. But the minute it's a company and the minute it sort of feels a little bit more
Legitimate.
formal,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's so funny how that happens.
You've got a few layers going on, Tavis. So you're also into skateboarding. So you were saying you're going to MC tomorrow, next weekend. So remember the back of the microphone.
Exactly. So I'll be
practice.
talking
Yeah.
the back of the microphone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always been a skateboarder. I guess I'm a skateboarder at like heart. It's influenced, I think, my creative path. I think just as a kid, looking at skateboard graphics, looking at Thrasher magazine and Transworld magazine. I mean, those were really foundation for me for sort of looking at what design was, right? What typography was, and I still design skateboards. I still do skateboard graphics now. I've done many over the years, and yeah, it's my kids used to skate a lot more than they do. They're 12 and 14 now, so skateboarding isn't quite as important as it was. But there's a bunch of us old guys who have kids that skated, and we all skated, and decided to start this contest at the Ashbridges Bowl. So Ashbridges Skate Park, or it's called Beach Skate Park, but everyone just calls it Ash. I think we're going on our 6th or 7th year. I could be wrong. But yeah, we have a bowl contest. It's coming up on the 24th. And yeah, I kind of drew the short straw and was asked to MC. So it should be fun. They were like, "You don't mind talking in public?" And I'm like, "I don't mind talking in public." They're like, "And you know all the tricks?" I'm like, "I think I know all the tricks."
And
So you'll be giving like a running commentary as well.
did you watch the Olympics and pick up a
Oh.
few commentaries for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, one of I would say sort of one of our Bowl Bash family members is Faye DeFazio Ebert, who's on the Canadian women's
Wow.
skateboard
Oh,
team.
wow.
So Faye and my son and a couple other kids kind of grew up skating that bowl
Wow.
since they were
Wow.
like little. So we're all pretty like proud of her and her accomplishments and being like the youngest Canadian Olympian. And yeah,
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
One thing that I actually had a question, and it came to my head, and you're actually the perfect human being to answer this question. Why is it that I'm seeing so many really young people in skating and winning skating? Like you see like 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds win gold. Why isn't, but when I grew up, Tony Hawk was like the man. And now it just seems to be like a younger.
Yeah, I think skateboarding is like when I was growing up, my parents didn't love the fact that I was skateboarding.
Okay.
Skateboarding the skateboard friends were not necessarily the best friends as far as like in my parents' eyes. And skateboarding was a rebellious thing. It wasn't sort of loved by everybody. And I think the X Games and I think the Do Tour, I think there were many years where, and I think, obviously things go in waves as well, but, there was a lot of years where skateboarders were making a ton of money.
Right.
And I think skateboarding became really popular. You have brands like Nike has like a whole skateboarding line, Adidas. And I think it just it wasn't sort of a bad thing to do. It was a good thing to do. And I think a lot of those kids that are of that age now, it's because their parents skated.
Right.
So they started them really young.
That's true.
Like even my guys, like my daughter she found a bunch of old pictures of her skateboarding. And I mean, she might've been 2 or 3. So I think a lot of those skaters that are competing at that young age, their parents skated. So the parents went to the skate park, they brought their kid. And also too, I think technology is a big factor.
Right.
Because you can get small boards, small trucks, softer wheels that are exactly the right size for a kid.
Right.
So
Okay.
you can progress so much easier when you've got a board that's fits you better than like we didn't have that.
Yeah, you just
we
got
had
a
big,
skateboard.
massive Pal Peralta boards that were like twice. You'd put them up next to you and they were like at your at your chin. So I think that's a factor, and then I also think that like these kids can. It's not like when we were growing up where like there was that one guy in the neighborhood that could do something really like, oh my God, that guy can do a kickflip now, or that guy can do a wall ride now, or like this guy built a launch ramp, so we're gonna have to like skate for 45 minutes to this guy's house to like
To do that.
to do like to try his launch ramp. It's totally different now. You've got every single trick has breakdowns on YouTube as to how to do them. So there's that, and I think in Toronto, I mean, we have even on the East End, you've got 4 or 5 parks in 20 minutes apart. So I think all of those factors make these younger skaters just that much better.
Right.
And they're fearless too.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah. Yeah. I always see that when you're skiing and on the slopes.
That's true.
Like, young kids just have no fear. And they're just bombing it.
It's funny what you said though about skating and how it's kind of gone into this cycle of like it was kind of counterculture, then it became culture. Now it's almost arguably counterculture again. It's a weird one because it's in the mainstream, but it's like
I feel like there's a bit of a dip. Like,
Yeah.
and I've noticed even with like our contest and even the skate park, you know, like 2 or 3 years ago, like the beach skate park would be packed. There's a little bit less now. Why that is, I don't know. Is it because, you know, kids like my kids are like into other things? Is it, I'm not sure. I mean, if you look at skateboarding on like the world stage, you know, that's 2 years now that it's been in the in the Olympics. So, you know, that's pretty massive. And a few of the other skateboard friends, a few of those guys ended up going to Paris, and they were like, all the skateboard events were sold out.
yeah,
Like they were like some of the highest watched, highest rated events.
Right.
So, but then on the flip side, for the kids that, you know, want to maybe have skateboarding be a little bit more of that rebellious sport, does having it now in the Olympics where you're judged on style and you're judged on what tricks you do, does that take the shine,
away- yeah.
take the shine off
It's
of it a little
maybe.
bit?
it's more like a sport to get a medal rather than like a passion. Like it can be both, but there are people out there that like their goal is to get like an Olympic gold, and that's like a whole different thing than it might be as a cultural.
Yeah, it's been a cool street skater.
Yeah,
Yeah, like there's this amazing skater from Vancouver. His name's Andy Anderson, and he's like he's just his own guy doing his own tricks with his own ideas about what skateboarding's about. And he's amazing. Like he's an amazing skateboarder. And like, you know, he was just on Tony Hawk's podcast, and you know, everyone just is like, you are something special. But I think he was in the Olympics last year, and I don't think he even qualified.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's now, I don't know. You'd have to check. You have to double check that. But it's, you know, how do you judge somebody like that? You don't.
Yeah.
So, and I think, yeah, it's a weird sport in that sense where, you know, you see guys like Nigel Houston or any of those street skaters, and it's insane how much wealth those guys made sort of
Right.
in the late, you know, 2015,
Yeah.
2014.
When
whatever.
the Tony Hawk games were at their peak, those PlayStation games were the best.
They were great.
Yeah. And then actually, you don't even really see them being talked about now. Like, I don't have to come out with new games.
Yeah, well, there's Skate, but I don't think it's. I mean,
The same.
Tony Hawk was really. I mean, I'm sure you guys are probably close to my age. It's
Yeah.
like the amount of hours playing Skate was just
Yeah,
was
I'd say
insane,
so.
and the soundtrack. That was
Yeah.
the other thing.
Yeah,
That's another
I
thing,
mean,
yeah.
the soundtrack was amazing, and
Yeah.
it was like the most diverse collection of songs. But it was great.
sports games that get great. Actually, games that do good soundtracks do very well. Like they become like FIFA. Like some of the FIFA football soundtracks are phenomenal. Some of those albums.
Yeah, that's a huge breakthrough moment for artists and bands as well if they get like their track on one of those games. It's like
But yeah,
huge.
yeah, no, but yeah, skating. It's interesting. That's would you. You know what you don't see a lot of is techno and skating. Maybe that's it.
You don't. It's like, you know, I think hip hop and skating tends to be mashed together a lot. And then, like when I was growing up, all my friends from school, so I went to like an arts high school, but all my friends that were in school, they were more into hip hop, more into grunge and all, you know, that, because that was sort of the, you know, it was the mid 80s, late 80s. And then all my skateboard buddies were into punk rock. So, but I think there's a little bit of the punk rock skateboard combination now, but it's not like it was.
Yeah, I wonder, does it have like an identity crisis at the moment, in a sense?
Which
Skating.
Skating?
I think, I don't know. I think that's a really tough question. Because, I mean, I think you could argue that.
There's probably two sides to it.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, there's the competitive side, and then there's the almost creative, expressive side with the street skating and.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of
right.
the things that I think kind of turned my son off a little bit from it is that,
Okay.
you know, some of those kids that were riding the bull with him were progressing like crazy, starting to enter contests, really taking that direction with skateboarding.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's not fun for me.
Right.
Like, that's not, like, I'm not having fun, Dad. Like, I don't want to feel nervous having to go skate the bowl because I can't land this trick or I can't try this trick because they already, like, had it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like an arms race.
It's like it's like an arms race. Whereas I know when I was growing up, it was, you know, things happened so much slower and things were so much more basic, you know, like
now it's so fast.
Yeah, like an ollie was a big deal. Like, oh, that guy can ollie now. That's like so cool. Or now he can ollie down 2 steps. Like, that's even cooler. Or, you know, somebody built a ramp and we're just gonna see who can drop in. Like, oh, that guy can drop in. It's this. It's not like now where it's like, oh, you know, like who can do a tray flip. And, you know, after you learn the tray flip, it's like, oh, okay, well, now I'm going to learn a heel flip version. And then, well, that was easy enough. So now I'm going to do it switch. And it's like,
just endless. Yeah.
It's endless.
And again, probably, as you said, all the videos can push that along. Like, I remember when Tony Hawk was like literally creating tricks that people do now for just fun. Like, it's not difficult. And he's
and there are definitely guys. I mean, there's this great scene in the Olympics where they had Mark Gonzalez and Tony Hawk skating the bowl there, and it's interesting to see because the two of them couldn't be more opposite. Right. So Tony Hawk is all about like, how many tricks do I know? How many tricks can I write in my book of like trick?
Yeah.
Mark Gonzalez is all about style, right? It's all about like, you know, how do I use this terrain? How do I kind of flow with it? Like, they couldn't be on more polar opposites. So watching them skate together was like pretty great because even them doing like the same trick, it's like, oh, it's so wild to see Mark Gonzalez do it and see Tony Hawk do it.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, we were discussing and you mentioned how it's like things kind of go in cycles. It's kind of like that with music as well, right? Like, I feel like we've said this a few times, but I mean, it always brings the conversation around. Like, when we were starting to listen to like techno and stuff, there was like that niche gabber, whereas now hard techno is pretty similar to what gabber is, and like it's getting big. So it's funny how those cycles happen. We were just saying the next big one. Well, I have a bet that it's going to be drum and bass is going to get the.
You know what? I think so too. I 100% think so too. Like, I mean, there was a time when. Back in LA where I was like, I really love drum and bass. Yeah. I've always loved it. But when I was buying techno records, you know, I was like, I can't afford to buy both. So I can't afford to buy 20 drum and bass records. And I can't afford to also buy another 20 techno records. So I'm just going to buy the techno records. Yeah.
So on techno, do you remember how and when you first got into techno?
So in LA, I went to Art Center, which is like it's a design school there. It's a small private design school, but it's sort of one of the top 3 design schools in North America. Some people probably argue the world, but so I ended up going there, and so that's a whole nother story too. But we'll talk about music, and I met a bunch of people that were into going at that time. I mean, raves had sort of just started, so that was 94. So in Los Angeles, there was little tiny promoters throwing sort of smaller kind of warehouse parties. So a few people that I met at school were going to these things, and I was like, okay, I'll check it out. I'll go. And I think, you know, I'd always, you know, growing up, loved hip hop, loved punk rock, loved like the Beastie Boys, you know, sort of had that, you know, liked harder things, like harder, you know, rap music, harder punk stuff like that. So I think once I started to hear house music and techno, I was like, huh, it sort of hit a bit of a nerve. Right. And I was like, this is pretty cool stuff. I think I remember buying the first Underworld album.
Ooh. Oh, yeah.
And I was like, what is this? Yeah. Like, why do I like this so much? You know, and I really was, it was something new. It was something that I hadn't really heard before. Yeah. I think, you know, for me, when it comes to techno, there's just something about it. Like, I still like house music. I don't play house music. I play techno music, but I do like it. It's not like I just hate it. But I think there's something about techno for me that it seems very creative. It's also very timeless. Like I just bought a bunch of stuff that was from like the early '90s, and it sounds like it was made yesterday.
Right.
Yeah.
So I also think too, like I've always been a fan of science fiction, mechanical things, engineering things, machines, robots, and techno sort of encompasses
Has a lot of those elements.
yeah,
Yeah.
encompasses a lot of that stuff. So I kind of got into liking it more at that time in LA. People were also playing breaks. Like breaks were really big there.
When was that? Like
I'd say like 95, maybe
90s.
96.
Yeah.
So in it, the West Coast breaks were like a whole like kind of scene.
Right.
And a lot of the full moon parties, like out in the desert, were most of it was breaks. There was a couple great albums that came out, I think, on Moonshine called Funky Desert Breaks.
Oh.
And it's kind of like techno, but more like a bit of a break beat to it.
Right.
But LA had an amazing music scene. And it had a lot of amazing local DJs. Like Doc Martin was a local DJ. Steve Laura was a local DJ. And I think DJ culture and rave culture in LA probably around, I don't know, you'd have to double check it, but I'd say like 95, 96, 97 just exploded.
Wow.
So you'd have, on Melrose, there was one record shop called Beat Non-Stop. And then kind of within a couple years, there was 6 record shops. And then, you'd go, everyone would know what day the releases showed up, and everyone would be lined up for,
It's crazy how different it is now. Like you would line up to a shop. Now I just wait for my Spotify release radar to come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just Bandcamp, it just feeds it to you, right?
Other way.
You twisted it the wrong way there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to twist this mic.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah, but I always heard, people say, you go to rave in New York for the clubs and then rave in LA for the warehouse scene.
Yeah,
Would you say
well,
that's
you've
fair?
also got the weather,
Yeah.
right? The weather's your advantage there. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there'd be raves in parking lots
Right.
because,
Why not?
why not? But I think so. LA then started to it ramped up. So I think things got bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where, you have Electric Daisy Carnival, you have those types of massive raves that were taking over like Pomona Fairgrounds. So you'd have, these huge, massive amounts of people. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Tom about this in the car, right? So we started listening to a guy called Marlon Hofstad, DJ Daddy Trance, before he got big, right? So I have this thing that when something you really love, like, and you found it early, and then it suddenly becomes mainstream and everyone's talking about it, I feel like a sense of like impending doom about it, because I'm like, oh no, it's going to hit the mainstream. What's your views on that?
Well, I think the techno that I like listening to is sort of so far from the mainstream that I don't think it's I don't worry too much about it. Like I feel like, what's being played now in a lot of cases maybe isn't even techno. And I hate to say that, but I think it's a mishmash of stuff. It's
there's a bit of the commercialization sound coming through. I've noticed a bit more.
Yeah, and then the really hard stuff is like it's wild. Like it's not something I really love. I see how it can probably make for an amazing event.
Yeah.
When you've got like that level where things are up in like 151, 152. Like I Hate Models. Like let's face it, like, he's an amazing showman.
Yeah.
Even she was just here, Sandra.
Sarah Landry.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's also, we actually have her boiler room on the TV.
Yeah. But
So-
again, probably experiencing it in person is probably a great show. But I'd listen to it a little bit, not much, like it by myself. It'd be more for harder styles of techno, more like an industrial,
Yeah.
that sort of vibe. But
Like I remember, like for me, what really sort of like started, I think, me even thinking like, oh, I think I want to be a DJ. Like I really, this is so interesting. I remember seeing Josh Wink play a set in LA, and he started off like really slow, like really mellow, like just like, and I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, what's up with this guy?
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, what's up with this weird kid with the white dreadlocks and you know what I mean? And he had so much control of the crowd. It was insane. Like by the end of it, like, he had gone from, housey kind of mellowy ambient stuff, maybe like 115, 118 BPM. And by the end, he was just crushing techno. Like just like the whole place was just it exploded, and I was like, huh,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
But that's what I love about DJing as well, is taking the crowd on like a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always talk about that.
And then then I'd start to there was a big club in LA called Giant, and then it turned into a place called Circus Disco. But Giant used to bring in amazing people, and it had this wild sound system. So and you could kind of, the way it was situated was that the DJ was sort of up on this platform a little bit, but you could kind of get around back and look down over top of them. So, I'd go see Sasha and Digweed or Nick Warren or Steve Lawler. And so many times you'd be like, what? He just switched the record? What?
Yeah.
What the hell? Like, they were so good at mixing records that I was like, huh, like that's like that to me was like, there's so much craft, and like, how much time does it take to like get to that point where you're just like able to seamlessly blend these records together, where I can't tell when you've taken, like, the fact that I'm shocked that you just took that record off.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think like a lot of my early years was like watching those guys who, let's face it, are pioneers of that genre, whether it's progressive house or whether it's techno.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Frankie Bones, who was one of my favorite DJs. It was just that, like, that's the sort of techno I really loved, with that clangy, minimal, Brooklyn style, whether it's Detroit or Brooklyn style techno. So he played LA a couple times. He played a massive rave. It might have been an EDC. I don't know. It was a huge rave where basically at one point he was so mad because his monitors weren't loud enough that he just shut everything off. And so I ended up talking to Adam X when he was here in Toronto, and I told him about that. He's like, I was there. He's like, yeah, he was super upset about it. But watching him spin records again was like, it was mind blowing, because it was such a, maybe different style with, maybe quicker mixes than, like, let's say someone like Sasha and Digweed or like Nick or like Nick Warren, but still like the total command of his craft. So for myself, I always kind of wanted to, for me, mixing records together to sort of make the most fluid transition is always my goal. But I think, I played records for a really long time. And then last year I got sort of upgraded my stuff, got a new mixer, I got new CDJs, and it was interesting to see how different DJing is, or at least mixing records is, than it is mixing vinyl.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
I feel like, it's weird. There's aspects of it now that make it easier, but there's also, it's almost like sometimes there's too much.
Okay.
Like
Too many options.
Yeah, that's fair.
Too many options.
Yeah.
I also think too, I don't know, it is a little harder to, I think, mix vinyl because you don't have the data that you do with all your tracks,
Definitely,
right?
Yeah.
So, you can organize them, harmonically, you can organize them
the
by
BPMs,
you can, you can look at the waveform, you can look at all these things, but with a record, you don't have that. So
No.
you don't know if it's 8A or 9A or 12A or
Right.
Yeah. There's a part of me that thinks you've gotta, like, so when I first learned, we learned in our DJ society in college, and the mixers there, they were old CDJs, so you didn't have the waveform. You literally, it was just digital and through the ear. And to me, I'm so grateful for that because I don't, yes, obviously I look at BPM and like, but ultimately it's how it sounds, right? And I think a lot of people can get lost with everything else and they're like worried about all these other things. And really it comes down to it. It's how that sounds. It doesn't even have to align.
No, but yeah, and I mean, I think I also miss record shopping.
Yeah.
I really do.
So you wouldn't do it as much, if at all, anymore, or?
I don't go and buy records.
Yeah.
No. You know, it's but it was one of those things where it was such a nice break from work or from,
Yeah.
you know, it was like just go there, and just kind of cruise through records and grab your headphones and plug them in and listen to a stack and put them back and listen to a few more. I don't know. There was something very calming and relaxing about it.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Hard Wax in Berlin?
No.
Oh, it's some record shop.
I heard it's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Never forget the first time. You have to walk down this like dodgy alleyway, and then up
Very
this
Berlin.
random flight of stairs to get up there. Yeah, it's very Berlin.
There was this amazing
Yeah.
record store in LA, at least it was my favorite, called Vinyl Fetish. And it had kind of a little bit of everything, but it did have an amazing like electronic record section. Like a lot of, like if you looked behind the counter, they'd have sections where all the DJs that were coming into town or DJs that were in the city had their sections where like guys would pull records for them
Right.
and stick them in their little slots.
Wow.
So it was always kind of fun to go there and just kind of cruise through their like piles of stuff. But
And you also have your own label, am I correct?
I do, yeah.
yes.
There's so much stuff going on right now.
Yeah. Yes. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's called Diorite Recordings. It was just, it's something that I've been, so I think I've got a few tracks that never get finished. How about that for an answer? I also think too, I've been trying this past year to kind of take the DJ thing a little, like kind of dig into it a little bit more. I think when I left LA, that was kind of the time when, there were a few really great opportunities that I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going back to Toronto that I missed,
Right.
that I kind of regret. So now that I'm back, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I want to dig into it a little bit more. And I know that, creating tracks it's a good thing. I think also it's something where I think all of us are like, you know what? I wish this track did this, or I wish this wasn't in this track here, or I don't know. There's so many times where I'm like, I wish I had something that sounded like this.
Yeah.
So I think with Diorite, it allows me to just kind of play and fart around and make tracks. And
So it's almost these self-releases then on
it's going to be self-releases for a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Until I get it going. And then, it'd be great to have,
More people on.
yeah, for sure.
And do you have a vision of style or niche for it, or is it pretty open, or?
I think it's going to be pretty pure techno.
Okay.
Yeah. Like for me, it's like I'm always been gravitated to more of that Detroit sound. A little more minimal, a little bit more space. Like Robert Hood is like one of my, like I love anything he does is just so good.
Yeah.
I actually even just finished picking up a few more like houseier tracks of his, and they're just, I don't know. There's just something about them.
Bangers.
They're bangers.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
Yeah,
bangers.
they are.
They really are.
I think he DJs with his daughter sometimes.
Yeah, she's got
Oh,
a few
really?
tracks.
I didn't see
Yeah,
that.
she does. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
I'll have
Yeah.
to look that up.
Yeah. It's very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tom also has a label, so he also has a lot of things going on.
Yeah,
We should
right.
join them together and call it TC and be done with it.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot easier, probably. Yeah.
What kind of stuff do you have on there?
Well, the way I approached the label was because I love like multiple forms of techno, so I wanted to do a label that didn't sort of conform to one particular niche. So it's called Oneris Records, and the Oneris were the gods of dreams. three of them were Morpheus, Fantasauce, and Phobiter. So with them, I kind of did like almost like three sub labels or three release series within the label itself.
Nice.
So with one of them, I got more sort of your classic like raw hypnotic styles of techno. The other one is kind of a bit more industrial, gritty sort of techno, and then the third one I sort of use for various artist releases, just featuring like a bunch of different styles and people from all over and everything. Yeah, so that was the kind of way I approached the label. Yeah, I kind of wanted it to be like a spectrum of different subgenres within techno.
That's cool. I actually
Yeah.
follow you guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I'll have to talk more about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Um,
great. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, you guys are doing an event or something?
We're doing
Yeah.
a live stream
yeah.
here this week, actually.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
coming up.
so you'll have to check that out. Yeah, live stream if this goes out, or maybe it might have been out by the time this episode comes out. So
You check it out on YouTube.
the recording, yeah. But yeah, we are doing a live stream here. Then I'm also taking submissions for our next various artist release as well, if anyone's interested in that. But yeah, a few things in the pipeline for our Naris records. So yeah, exciting things to come.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean,
Yeah.
it's for me, I think Diorite is just it's more of it sits there and stares at me and forces me to like
Right.
pick at it. Where I think if I didn't have it, I'd be like, oh, I'll like do that
Yeah.
later.
Right.
So hopefully, I've got 3 tracks. So hopefully, I mean, my initial thought was like, oh, maybe beginning of summer, but now it's probably going to be a little bit later.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's all right. I think it's whenever you feel like comfortable and satisfied with it, and you want to share that with the
Yeah.
world. It's all completely. up to
We
you.
had a guy in here yesterday who's a producer and does mastering as well, and like his biggest piece of advice, I suppose, for people releasing stuff was like, don't also wait for perfection.
No.
Like you're better getting it out and like let the world see it, and you can always refine
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, even with this new company I started for the like design company, it's kind of the same thing where I'm just like, I'm just going to do it
Yeah.
and stop sitting on my ass and not
Mm.
doing it, because I've been kind of wanting to do it, but I've been reluctant to do it. But it's like, what's it going to hurt? It's not, it's,
Exactly.
yeah.
You can get so caught up in the what ifs rather than
Yeah.
just like even opening this place, like there is a real moment after a year of talking to be like, we just gotta pull
Just
the
gotta
trigger and
shoot our
go.
shot,
And
yeah.
like you're looking at, I remember I was talking to Tom and I was like, oh my God, we've got so much to do. How am I gonna, like at the peak of a panic. And he was just like, look, break it out into stages. We just gotta, take it bit by bit and,
Yeah, no, it's the same. I'm just like, it's just there's always so much stuff to do, but I think everyone's in the same sort of boat, especially if you're a creative person and
Right.
you've got a lot of projects going on where it's, like, where do you start? Like even with the company, it's like, oh, I guess I need a logo. So it's like you're asking the illustrator and designer to design his own logo for his own company. It's like, it's the worst, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's no one, you're not doing it for anyone, you're doing it for yourself. You're like, oh, it's got to be awesome,
Right.
it's got to look super cool, and then you stare at a blank screen and you're just like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm gonna go walk the dog, because it's like, honestly, I
Yeah.
have no idea what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know. I'm 49. It's my birthday tomorrow.
Oh, congrats.
I'm 49, and it's just like I'm kind of at that stage where I'm just gonna, all the things I always wanted to do that I was reluctant to not do, right? Even with the DJing, it's like I kind of just poked at it for so many years.
Right.
Played a few little places, lots of like after parties, lots of, everyone fall back to someone's house and like, DJ. My friend and I, Steve, threw a little one night club where we had some bigger DJs come in, which was really fun in like Santa Monica. But didn't really, the thing about DJing is that it's no different than, even when I look back at like what I did, I think a lot of the success that I got was a lot of it was luck. I think, sort of when I got out of school, my style was radically different than sort of, I think, most illustrators that were working at that time. So it stuck out, and I got lucky with like a few things. I started working in the record industry right off the bat, which was great because when the magazines in New York started calling my portfolio in, I had this massive portfolio full of real work.
Right.
So I think
But you made your own look as well, right? That you would put the time in there to make that, like, look was more leaning on your side in the sense, because if they called you and you didn't have that work, it would have been,
you were ready for the call.
And I think, you guys know too, it's like, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, DJing now is so easy. Like it's so, it's like you got to have this equipment, and the equipment really helps you make or have a better performance and, whatever. But it's sort of not true. You still have to put the work in.
Yeah.
And I think being a professional DJ, it means you are a professional. It means that you are working all day, whether it's finding music, organizing sets, marketing, social media, coming to Sleepless Studios for 2 hours to practice before you play, because who knows, maybe your setup at home isn't like it is here, right? So, and all of a sudden you're at a club here in the city and you're looking at a different mixer, and you're looking at 300s instead of a 900, or instead of a 1,000, or whatever CDJ you have, and all of that takes time. And I think it's funny, I got stuck on watching James Hype YouTube videos.
Oh, same. I've gone down that rabbit hole
I
as
think
well.
we've all been down there.
I was up until like 4:30 in the morning watching them all, and it's like, I don't love his style of music, but I kind of love him.
Yeah, you appreciate the skill.
I think I preferred. There is a part of me now, and I'm sorry, James Hype, for this hot take, but I feel like he's gotten to a bit of a self-idolization piece of his career, whereas I think at the beginning he was a bit more humble. Maybe that maybe people disagree with that, but his skill is second to none.
Yeah.
But he does sometimes take the long route when you could do something much simpler.
Yeah. What's up the show too?
Yeah.
The show too.
Yeah. But he's a showman. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly,
I could never be that type of DJ.
No.
Because I think I come from an era where that type of DJ didn't exist, and I don't think it's just not who I am personally.
Yeah,
right.
I get that.
So and I think too, like, I'm old enough to have experienced clubs where the DJ wasn't necessarily it was about half the reason why you were going.
Yeah.
It wasn't like 99% of the reason why you were going.
I think those are the best nights, in my opinion. When you're going for the vibe rather than necessarily the person.
Yeah. And some of the older clubs too. I mean, DJ booths were way up somewhere, right? You could see them, but you couldn't access them.
Yeah.
You couldn't really see what they were doing. Besides, you'd see their head maybe bopping around.
Yeah.
It wasn't like now where it's like the DJ becomes this centerpiece that everyone, and that's the other thing too. It's like, the few places I played have been more of those older style of clubs,
right,
where you're kind of there by yourself.
Yeah.
But then to all of a sudden have this mass of people around you, on top of like everyone, like, oh, like, what track is that? What's this? What's this? What's this? I think it's just there's a reason why I think a lot of DJs of today, like, build that armor and build that, the like James hypeness of the thing,
probably,
right? Is because like, it's like, well, fuck it. You know what? If you're going to want me to be that guy and stare at me, then I'm going to give you a show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's your opinion then on this, like, movement of promoters that are trying to put the sound system at the center point of the event? Would you
like the
agree with
actual that? like a void system?
Yeah,
like
they're
selling
trying
it on that.
Yeah, they're trying to almost sell the event on, this is our headliner, the sound system.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Would you agree
I think for us geeks, it's kind of
it's
cool. I mean, I remember clubs in LA used to kind of do like Giant was the first one that had, I'm trying to remember the name, it was like the TR3 or something like that. They kind of would have it on their flyers. And but really it's still about the music.
Yeah,
You know
I
what I
think I'd
mean?
agree.
Like
Yeah,
it's kind of like it's about going there and enjoying the music that's being played.
yeah, because I've been to a couple of those events where they put the system at the headliner, and then you get there, and they either maybe they've got it turned up like too loud, and it's just like boom, boom. You can't really like. I like being able to like hear the different elements of the music and rhythms, and or maybe they just don't have somebody like controlling it
Yeah,
properly behind the
I think
scenes.
that's the thing too. I think
So it's all well and good getting a super powerful system, but if it's not like
Being well used.
yeah,
Like
well
if you're just
used.
redlining the whole time,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, it's sort of like that class got taken off the curriculum
Right,
for even like newer, younger DJs.
yeah,
I kind of noticed that the other night too, where I was like, you guys are on an amazing system right now, but what you're doing is you're pushing the system in a wrong way,
Yeah.
and it doesn't sound good.
right.
I saw this sponsored post on Facebook from a studio, and a part of me cried. It was, if you're not redlining, you're not headlining. I
Oh,
was,
jeez.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and I think that's it's interesting too. Like out of the few, I've been trying to go out a little bit more too, and out of the few things I've gone to, I've noticed that people sort of have a tough time getting lost in the moment of those nights. Where I think maybe like when I was in LA, certain places like just it was like 2 lights on in the entire club, and people were just kind of getting lost in it. They weren't worrying about the drops. They weren't worrying about if that song that they had downloaded was going to be played. I don't want to sound like the old guy that's like bitching about like, oh, it was better back in the day. I don't think it necessarily was. I just think it's different. Like even on whatever Friday night when I went out, I noticed like younger crowd, younger DJs, and it was really more about how can we take every song, build it up, drop it. Every song, build it up, drop it. And it's like,
Yeah.
you got to have a little bit other stuff in there to
Yeah.
kind of let people disappear a little bit.
Well, it comes from a generation where there's a constant dopamine hit. So in the same way that reflects in the music, right? It is because whether we like it or not, that's what social media is. It's literally like I'm gonna scroll and fill my brain with dopamine. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing with these drops. But saying that, when you mentioned about older clubs where the vibe is much, another hot take and a future prediction, that's going to come back because people are going to get tired of, already you see a lot of movements now of being unplugged, going into a forest, not having your phone.
Yeah.
In Vancouver, there's a lot of like forest raves, and it's like, there's not a lot, you don't see a lot of footage about it. And I think that kind of unplugged vibe of being like more about the vibe, that's going to come back. Because this, as it is now, it's like this peak of the mainstream in DJing and DJing culture where it's the icon. But that's going to get tiring after a while for people, because it's like you're just listening to something on loud the whole time, and people are going to come back to it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I feel like North America, especially from what I've seen anyway, seems to have this like wave of like being super into like warehouse events and stuff at the minute. You wouldn't see that as much in Europe now, from what I've seen as much. But over here, they seem to be super into doing their warehouse style events.
I feel like more of the underground, like especially for the techno scene in Toronto, at least what I've seen so far,
Yeah.
is that you've got a couple of promoters that bring in amazing techno acts, but they're always having to default to whether it's they're defaulting to a warehouse or whether they're preferring to have it at a warehouse because the warehouse space is raw and maybe fits the music a little bit better. But it is interesting that some of the bigger clubs in the city don't bring in those acts to play those clubs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Ben Clock would never play a club per se in Toronto. He might play a festival and he'd play a warehouse.
Yeah.
But he'd never play, maybe never, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, he might have played Coda years ago.
Coda,
maybe.
yeah.
but on that, yeah, probably Toronto might have a bit of a venue shortage, as it were, for that like medium,
Yeah.
small size.
So you only
Uh,
have small and large. You
Well,
don't
it's only
have.
yeah, it's only like yeah, the bigger you got like bigger nightclubs like your Rebels and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
Sound machine.
yeah,
and
sound
things like
machines.
that.
But then yeah, they wouldn't really hold a lot of those underground.
But it's strange. Those
Style.
like those warehouse events, the ones I've been to. So I
They
went.
pack it. They fill the place.
They're packed.
Yeah, they fill the
So,
place.
but maybe it just gives them a little bit more wiggle room, and it's a little bit less restrictive
Yeah,
than
maybe.
Yeah.
a club.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe I don't know. Does it play more into the vibe of what techno is too? Is Rebel a bit more, um, what's the word? Restrictive.
Yeah.
Instead of a warehouse can be more expressive to what techno is.
Yeah, and I think too, probably the promoters are always worried about the crowd and who's going to show up.
Right.
You know, I don't know. I think, anytime the club has bottle service, I think that's a problem. So,
It's there is there's a part of me whenever I see a club that has table service, VIP stuff like that, I'm like, you've lost me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
So I don't know. So maybe I should retract what I just said and say, you know what, it's probably good that they keep it the way it is.
Yeah,
But-
maybe. Yeah, no, that actually is, it's always a funny one for me where people, like, you hear people go to Vegas and stuff, it's a different vibe, but like even within, you go to a club, you then sit at your own private table with a bottle, and it's like, I think you've missed what clubbing is. It's getting lost in the music, dancing, meeting people, but instead you would prefer to be closed off at a table, sitting down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's a tough landscape to sort of navigate. But it is strange with the city and the fact that, there are so many DJs that live in the city.
Yeah.
So you had a hot take before we started the
Yeah.
podcast. You were saying that there's better Toronto DJs than LA ever had. Was that?
No, what I said is that I think. I mean, listen, I think the level of DJs in Toronto is amazing. I think it always has been. I remember I used to come back to visit my parents. Christmas and holidays and stuff, and go out, and I was always kind of shocked that like somebody that I'd never heard of was as sort of technically proficient as they were, and
Right.
the music they was playing was like amazing. And I think out of the little bit I saw of Toronto over those years that I was in LA, I think Toronto definitely has even like a bit of a sound per se. It's like a little more housey, but it's a little bit more like a bangy kind of house. Maybe a little bit more DJ sneakish.
Right.
I'm sure your guy's going to get a ton of comments. Like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But yeah, I've always kind of felt like it kind of had that a little bit, like definitely a little bit more housey, but a little bit more like bangy, kind of upbeat.
Yeah. I
But
think
like,
somebody said that on the podcast before.
Yeah, I think somebody said that. Well, I mean, from what we've experienced as well now, like the harder techno is really coming through. But maybe that's just the circles we're in as well.
Yeah.
but to get back to the LA thing, no, I was saying that like it felt, and maybe it was just the time and sort of when things were happening, but it felt like it was easier to find places to play in LA
Oh yeah.
than it is here, where I feel like
Right.
Tough go here. Yeah.
it's a really tough go here. I feel like there's, everyone's kind of got their crew, and I think they do their things, and maybe it's you almost have to do something on your own.
Right.
There's a bit of that, and then another thing is ultimately, as they like to be called, event producers are there to try and make money, right?
Yeah.
And so then what they do is they go, yeah, sure, you want to play? What's your social media follower? Well, who else have you played for?
Exactly.
And they're a bit less likely to take a gamble unless like you're one of their buddies or something.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's fair.
That's just and like it goes back to what we were talking about the music industry as well. It's the same thing. You want to get signed to a label. What's the social media influence? So that's, I think, and there are people out there like Meg, my pet monster. Like we touched on this before, and she's been on the podcast, but she's doing phenomenal stuff as well with the community. She is helping to drive that, and from that, I know there's been offshoots of different things that have come off. So there are people trying, but I think getting access to play somewhere, it's also probably a function of the fact that there are so many people now that DJ or want to DJ.
Yeah. 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 I DJ'd a friend's 50th birthday party, and it was now he's, they're kind of involved in the scene, and it was insane how many people, like, it was basically open decks for the whole
Yeah.
night, but it was wild.
Oh wow.
Like, I was like, is everybody here a DJ? Is there anyone here that is not a DJ?
Right. Yeah. Well, this is
And
it.
everyone crushed it. That was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
other thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, whatever, basically from what, however long the party went, every single person that stepped up there was a competent DJ that played 45 minutes, and you were like, well done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of cool if
Yeah.
you've got a city where, you kind of got all that great local talent.
Yeah. And that's why we set up a space like this, so people have a place to practice if they can't.
Well,
And,
yeah, and with the open house as well, we were saying we're doing a live stream so people, get their voices out there. We're also recording sets, and then we'll put those out onto the social media, and hopefully that gives people more of a platform as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have to tell you guys, when the first time I came here, I was like, this is the greatest ever, because so I have a pretty good setup at home, but I end up sort of being able to practice or play when it's, maybe 12:30 at night, when everyone's in bed, and it's the volume is pretty low. It's, so it's not this where you can have it at a decent volume, and you've got, professional gear, and you've got a third CDJ, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because even if you can afford 3,000s, a third is you're really balling on with a third.
This is
So it's nice. It's nice to be able to come here, and the few times I came here, I think I showed up at midnight or something like that. It was perfect. I was the only one here. Turned on the lights. Went in, played for a couple hours, turned off the lights, went home.
Yeah. Well, that's why. Yeah, we wanted it to be like available, like whenever you need it, it's here.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait around on like our schedules or whatever. Whenever you need time to practice or express yourself, like it's there and you can book it.
Or you got an idea, you can go into the recording room, mess around with some beats loud, see what it sounds like, and then go home, kind of a thing, now that you've worked on it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, too, what you're going to end up getting is, and I'm sure you've noticed this already, is that everyone that's coming in is going to respect the space, because they realize, like, how amazing it is that this is here.
For the most part, people do. There are the occasional.
We're off camera. But it's great so far, and hopefully it's just onwards and upwards from here, and we got lots of plans.
Yeah,
for the
lots
future,
of plans,
so,
lots of upgrades that
yeah.
we're constantly trying to look at doing.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to the future. We're looking forward to the future.
So will we, before we get to the wheel, is there anything that you want to shout out, promote, put out there into the airwaves?
I would just, just if you are in the beaches area on the 24th of August, come by and check out the Ash Bowl Bash. It's a fun event. If you want to come skate, you just have to sign the waiver. You do have to wear a helmet because it's a big scary bowl, and we have insurance that we need to adhere to. But come. It's a fun event. It's super chill. We've got so many amazing prizes, and you get to listen to me talk for the day.
Give us it on social media. We'll also share.
Oh
it as well.
yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah,
we'll
for
share
sure
it as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So
what's this? The
hot
Wheel
ta-
of Death?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hot take wheel. So give it. I'll just go to the camera there, and give it a spin, and I'll read it because my chicken scratch is very illegible.
Okay.
And then we'll discuss.
Okay. It's okay to leave someone on red on like messages, like don't get back to them, or not.
Thoughts?
Well, okay. I'm old, right? So I'm really bad when it comes to returning messages. So I don't think it's. I think you should try and not do that. But the other thing I have to say, here's my one gripe.
Yeah.
It sort of has something to do with that. Is Instagram. If someone sends you a message on Instagram, whether it's another DJ to a promoter, whether it's whoever, right? I know sometimes we're all busy, but you should be able to get back to that person
Because you're scrolling on Instagram anyway.
within a day. Within a day.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes they get stuck in the other secret
Yeah.
message spot, but let's face it, we all check that anyway, right?
Yeah.
That's my biggest gripe is like sometimes trying to contact someone, and even if someone's not interested,
It's better to just get the answer.
Yeah.
just say, you know what,
Something.
thanks,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not interested.
Yeah.
But to get nothing is so. I find it so weird. It's just a weird, And I've actually noticed that too, with like the illustration industry, with like younger art directors. If they'll call you up and they'll be like, "Hey, can you do this job for us?" and you're like, "No, I'm so busy," you don't get anything back. And I always think that's like such a rude, weird way of like just say, "Yeah, no problem," like next time, or "That's a bummer," or whatever. But to say nothing is
Oh, they just hang up?
they'll just like the you don't get an email back.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. And I'm just like, how hard is it to write no problem?
Yeah, it's again, I think it's a function of attention spans and time, right? So the issue today is that, like, I notice this for myself, and I actually have an app that puts time limits on all my things that I spend too much time on. It's because you go home after a long day of, whatever you're doing, work, and then you sit on the couch, you open up your app of choice, and before you know it, 2 hours are gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you put off that message, you put off that thing, and then life gets in the way, and
This is it. 5 hours have
yeah.
passed.
and then you're like, oh God, I have to get back to that person. So
Yeah.
I think you're right. People deserve the response, but I also can see that it's probably a function of just suddenly people don't have time, and that time is
Yeah.
actually being sucked in by whatever attention grabbing app you
Yeah.
enjoy.
Totally. I mean, there are definitely times when, like, even like, I've had a student email me about some issue, and I'm just like, okay, I'll get back to them. But I do get back to them.
Yeah.
It's the not getting back to that person that drives me kind of crazy, because
Yeah.
it's so simple to do.
Or even just I'll get back to you soon.
Yeah.
And then you can delay it or whatever.
Yeah. So there we go.
There we go. Well,
yeah,
thank you
thanks
so much.
Thanks,
Tavis
guys.
Coburn.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Hope that was all right.
Yeah, that was great.
We'll make sure to put all of Tavis's socials and stuff in the description below. And if you want to keep up to date on everything we're doing, make sure to follow us on socials as well. But until next time, then peace.
Sleep well.